Movie buffs, welcome back to the Movie Bay. This is Day. In today's video, we're going to take a look at some failed reboots and remakes. Some of these are going to be reboots, some of them are going to be remakes. Either way, they're going to be movies that failed to take off. In the case of the reboots, they failed to reboot the series again. In remakes, they just failed to live up to the original. As far as audience scores, they may have made more money because it's a different day and time. Currency is a little bit different now than when a lot of these movies came out. But they failed to get the audience. They failed to convince Hollywood. Put it this way, they made money, but not enough money for Hollywood. You know how that goes. So let's dive in. We're going to take a look at some failed reboots and some failed remakes, and let's have fun talking about them. Starting with one that, and just because Hollywood said they were bad, don't mean I think all of these are bad. Some of these was actually pretty decent. Now, none of these are better than the originals that they spawned from. Now, there is good remakes out there. There is great reboots out there. And there's even actually some that are better than the originals. Not many, but there are some. These are not, however. So let's dive in. Starting with Carrie, starring Chloe Grace Moretz, I think it is, Mortiz, and Julianne Moore. And this particular reboot came out in 2013. The original came out in 1976 with Sissy Spacek, and that was an absolute banger. I did not have a huge issue with this movie. I understood what it was, and I understood what they was trying to do with it, but it didn't really catch fire the way they wanted it to. I didn't think it was a terrible movie, but again, it's a failed remake. It really was. By Hollywood standards, it was a failed remake. Just for instance, its IMDb. Oh boy. Its IMDb rating is 5.8, which is, in my opinion, isn't bad at all. So it wasn't a bad movie. It was just, it failed to do what it was supposed to do. And you'll see a lot of these, well, not a lot of these, some of these were actually pretty decent, but they just didn't catch fire. Now we have Nicolas Cage in The Wicker Man. Now, again, I've seen the original years ago. I don't have the original in my collection, but I'm going to fix that sooner than later. I do want the original in my collection. This one, I don't mind having this in my collection either. It just, me personally with this movie, I think the writing was a little bit off, and I don't think Nicolas Cage was the guy that they wanted for the lead. I get it, he was hot as hell at the time, but no way. And this came out in 2006. Not a good movie. Next up is one that was very disappointing to me. We did not have Robert Englund. We're talking about The Nightmare on Elm Street. This is a triple, but we're going to focus on The Nightmare on Elm Street. This particular movie came out in 2010. The original came out in 1984. We didn't have Robert Englund come back, which I didn't really take in huge issue with Robert Englund not coming back. He's up there in age. Even when this came out, he was up there in age. So I don't have an issue with him not returning for the role. I will say Jackie Earle Haley was not, in my opinion, again, I know a lot of people like Jackie Earle Haley. I'm not a huge fan of Jackie Earle Haley. I think some of the stuff he's in is okay, but if I was casting for this movie, it wouldn't have been him. That's for damn sure. But again, this movie failed on so many different levels. I think they really failed with Jackie Earle Haley. That's one. And I think the makeup and the costume was fine. The makeup, the face was way off. The face was disturbingly off. Even though we know Freddy is a disturbing looking character, that mask was just wrong. The story with the pedophile thing, I get it. You couldn't tell that story back in 1984. You can tell that type of story today. But, and again, I don't have a problem with that aspect of it, because let's face it, Freddy Krueger was not a good guy. He did a lot of bad things. Being a pedo and a murderer and a kid killer and all of that, that's par for the course. The guy actually died and became a dream demon, so he didn't do good things in life. But I just think, again, they just didn't, the story was off. It didn't have the scary factor that the original had. It didn't have real, like Jackie Earle Haley didn't have good comedic timing like Robert Englund. He was just wrong. If they would have took their time and casted someone better and probably worked on that mask a little bit more and then tightened up the story, this could have been a good reboot, and they probably could have rebooted the franchise if they'd have done it right. But they, again, the story wasn't all bad. It could have been tightened up. Like I said, it could have just been tightened up. Jackie Earle Haley, yeah, I wasn't sold on him being Freddy. That's just me. So that was a failed reboot. It did not reboot the series. Then we have one here that I actually thought was pretty good. And this one came out in, let's see here. This one came out in 2010. The original came out in 1984. We're talking about The Karate Kid. I didn't have an issue with this one. Jaden Smith did a good job in the movie. In my opinion, at the time, he was a very young kid. I wasn't going to be hard on the kid actor. He was okay. He did a fine job. Jackie Chan did a good job. I didn't really take too much of an issue with this movie. It just didn't catch on. So yeah, this is one that I actually liked. I didn't have a problem with. Just like Carrie, I really didn't have a problem with Carrie. They just could have tightened it up a little bit more. You know what I'm saying? I think the story was good, but this one I think was good, and I think the story was good. It just didn't catch on. Here's one that, when I first saw this, when I saw this one years ago I think I had this on VHS at first. And I got it, was it VHS or DVD? Either way. This movie, Godzilla, this particular version of Godzilla came out in 1998. And it was all right. I watched it, and I didn't really have harsh criticism for it, but a lot of people didn't like the Godzilla actual, the animatronic, the special effects. A lot of people just didn't like this movie. It didn't catch on with the audiences, but I didn't have too many issues with this movie. You know what I'm saying? But it was years ago when I seen it. And I haven't seen this one it's probably been about 10, 12 years since I watched this movie. Here's one that, again, this is one that I didn't have an issue with either. I liked it. I know, now watching this in the original, I enjoy both of them probably equally. And that's Red Dawn. The original Red Dawn came out in 1984. This one came out in 2012. I didn't have an issue with it. I mean, it was a modern version of Red Dawn again, but it didn't, the audience scores in Hollywood, it just was this would have been a remake. This was a failed remake. Godzilla would have been probably a reboot. If this would have done well, this probably would have relaunched the Godzilla franchise. There's many Godzilla franchises. And Karate Kid didn't catch fire. If it did, this would have probably been a reboot, like rebooting the franchise. Here's one. This was a failed remake. That wasn't a reboot. This was a one and done, because the original was a one and done. And you got Colin Farrell, Kate Beckinsale, and Jessica Biel in Total Recall. The original Total Recall came out in 1990, and this one came out in 2012. So, some time has passed, but not a whole lot. 22 years? I mean, that's a lot of time, actually, but this movie wasn't good. If it wasn't called Total Recall, it would have been a decent movie. But since it was called Total Recall, it was a bad movie. If this was anything other than Total Recall, it would have been all right. This is probably, to me, the most disappointing reboot. This would have been a reboot because this was going to actually reboot the franchise. This is the most disappointing reboot that I can think of. Absolutely. And it's RoboCop. This came out in 2014. The original came out in 1987, starring Peter Weller, and that ran for 3 movies, so that was a franchise. And if this was successful, it would have rebooted the franchise. It wasn't good. The story was horrible. The first of all, okay, look, Joel Kinnaman, I think he did an all right job. He was all right. Then the gender swap with Lewis. Not only did they gender swap, they gender and race swap. That was trash, even though I love Michael K. Williams. And I'm not saying he did a bad job. I just didn't like that. I didn't like the way Murphy died in this one. It was too PG in my opinion. A car explosion, and they didn't really show anything. You're talking about a movie that was made in 2014 versus a movie that was made back in 1987. It was gorier. It just had a way. It was more deep. It was, with all the special effects and the advancements in technology that they had at their disposal for this movie, they couldn't make this movie better than the movie that came out in 1987. Really? And the stuff they are allowed to get away with nowadays in Hollywood versus what they was able to get away with back then. Paul Verhoeven got away with he got away with bloody murder in 1987. Imagine what these guys could have got away with in 2014. But they didn't. This movie was an absolute failure. It was a failure to me. It was a failure to Hollywood. I like certain parts of this movie, but as a whole, I did not like this movie, and I think it did RoboCop a disservice. They changed it up just too much. I don't mind changing it up a little bit to reflect the times, but they changed that movie up way too much. I know what they was trying to do with that movie. They was trying to get the rating where they can get more asses and seats, but they should have stuck closer to the source material. Because the original movie, I get it, it went on to become a cult classic, and they wanted this to be a mainstream classic, but they failed. Here we go. We got one. The original came out in 1980. This one came out in 2005, so that's 25 years. The Fog. This movie is shit compared to the original. I'm just going to just say it just like that. This movie was just, compared to the original Fog, this was dog shit. Sorry. Here's another one that, when I first saw it, I was comparing it to the original. But I know what they was trying to do with this one. It took me a few years to figure out. As I got deeper into my movie journey, I realized what they was doing with this movie. This was actually going to be the start of a new franchise, a new Monsters universe. They was going to do a new Monsters universe. Universe was going to relaunch the entire Monsters universe, starting with this movie, The Mummy, with Tom Cruise. In knowing what they was doing with this movie, I've come to like this movie more over time. At first, I didn't like it, but I watched it. Actually, not too long ago, I just pulled it out and I watched it, and it wasn't really that bad. But they was actually going to relaunch the entire new Monsters universe, starting with this one, and it just didn't do good. It failed. So that's that. Maybe if they would have named this movie something else other than just The Mummy, they could have named this. They could have had Mummy in the title, but they should have named it something else, something Mummy. Maybe it would have went down a little bit better. I don't know. The movie wasn't horrible, though. But when you think about The Mummy, you're thinking about the Brendan Fraser movies. And did I say the RoboCop was the most disappointing on this list? I think this one probably got it. No. This was shit. But I think I'm going to still say that the RoboCop was probably more shit for me. Now, for you, this one might be more shit than RoboCop, but let's dive in. Mark Wahlberg's in the Planet of the Apes. Jeez. This particular movie came out in 2001. I have all the Planet of the Apes movies behind me, all the originals, the Matt Reeves versions. I got them all, and this is, I watched this not too long ago again. Some movies I like to go back and watch. There's a lot of controversy around the Planet of the Apes movies. The Matt Reeves ones, the originals. Not controversy, but there's a lot of comparisons. And so I decided to give this one another watch. And I liked it a little bit better than when I first saw it. The first time I saw it, it put me to sleep. I ain't going to lie. But I watched it during the day when I was up, bright-eyed and bushy-tailed, had my coffee next to me. And it wasn't as bad as I thought, but it's still bad. You understand what I'm saying? So not really all that great. And yeah, that came out in 2001. Next up, these are honorable mentions because I like both of these, but they just failed at their mission. For this one here, we got Superman Returns. This is the Superman collection, but we're talking about Superman Returns. I liked it. I'll be honest with you guys. I liked it. I wanted to see another one. I liked Brandon Routh. I really did. I think he looked just like Reeves. Some people said his acting wasn't on point. I'm like, it was the first one. We should have got at least one more before we would have, cast judgments on him as an actor. I think he did a decent job. Me personally, I liked the space shuttle scene. I loved that. I think that's probably the best scene in the movie that everybody talk about. I like the father and son dynamic they had in there. I like Kevin Spacey as Lex Luthor. I do think they spent a little bit of too much time on the whole Kevin Spacey kryptonite thing that he had going on, like that kryptonite country that he was trying to build or whatever the hell. But I think it was a solid movie, and it was a good reboot to the Superman franchise, and I wish we would have got at least one more with him before they jumped to reboot it again with Henry Cavill, which was fantastic. Man of Steel definitely is a better movie than this, but this was a good movie, and I wish they would have just did one more with Brandon Routh. And if that one would have failed, okay, fine, let's go ahead to Henry Cavill. But I know, listen, It's not my hundreds of millions and billions of dollars on the line in Hollywood making these decisions. So I get it. If the movie didn't put butts in seats, I get it. They got to do something else because they got to make that profit because they got to pay people. I get it. So yeah, to me, that was a failed reboot that didn't relaunch the Superman series with that timeline in mind. They did reboot it with Henry Cavill, but again, with Henry Cavill, think about it. We still only got one movie. There was only one Man of Steel movie. We didn't get a part 2 to that. He went on to do other stuff with, Justice League and Batman v Superman and all that, but we should have got at least a Superman 2 with Henry Cavill. We didn't, and you can't tell me Man of Steel didn't put butts in seats because it did. And here's one that I really liked, but again, it didn't reboot the franchise, and I don't really get why. It was really good. I liked it. Child's Play, the Chucky remix Child's Play. I thought this was a really good movie. Was it better than the original? I say this. It was different than the original. Very, very different because you're not talking about a demon-possessed doll. You're talking about a demon-possessed AI. Yeah, I would say it was demon-possessed, like a demon. It was demon-possessed, but it wasn't. Chucky, the original Chucky, was demon-possessed, but we actually knew who did it. Because the guy laid the doll down in the first movie in the department store and literally possessed them. So we knew who it was. So it felt a little different. This one is just like a cursed or demonic AI, which was fantastic. I like that. And I'm quite sure this movie led to Megan a little bit. Because Megan in this movie is eerily similar. But again, I think this movie was good. It just failed to relaunch the Child's Play franchise. I think if this movie would have did better, I think we probably would have got a second one. You know how Hollywood go. If it makes the money, they'll make another one. Now, that's all I got right now. There's plenty more failed franchises, failed reboots and failed remakes. That's just a few. There's also some movies that actually did a good job at remaking or rebooting. So that's everything. Let's recap. We got the honorable mention, Child's Play, Superman Returns. I think they were good movies. I think they were solid films. They just failed in the mission, that's all. Planet of the Apes, not a good movie. Not as harsh. I'm not going to give it the harsh criticism that I've given it in the past. It's a watch. I'm not going to say it's unwatchable. It's watchable. You can watch this movie. The Mummy. My opinion on this movie has changed over the years. In understanding what Universal was trying to do with this movie, I come to appreciate it a little bit more. I'm not going to say it's a really great movie, but it's a watchable movie. The Fog, this just compared to the original, this doesn't work. RoboCop, again, it's watchable. It's a serviceable movie. You can sit down and get some enjoyment from this movie. But for us hardcore RoboCop movies, us hardcore guys who was there in '87 when this movie came out, who went to the theater, who saw this on VHS tapes over their friends' houses and stuff like that, where RoboCop was the talk of the town, and then you watch this, it's very disappointing. Again, you can still watch this movie and get some enjoyment from it, but it's just not. It's not a good movie. It's just an alright movie. Total Recall, for it to be Total Recall, is not good, but if it was something else, it would have been alright. The Karate Kid. I didn't have a problem with this at all. I actually think this is a good movie. For what it was. You got a young kid, Jaden Smith. He was a young kid at the time. And Jackie Chan. I think the movie was fine. I didn't have a problem with it. Godzilla. I think this was fine. I would have to watch it again, but I think it was fine. I'm not going to say this was a bad movie. I'm going to say this is a watchable movie. Red Dawn. I actually like this one. I'll call this a good movie. I dug it. It's not it's not quite the original, but it's not bad. The critics are the critics. Nightmare on Elm Street. None of these movies are like shit movies except for two of them. So this movie, you can get something from it. It's not unwatchable. Okay? This one, to me, it's not unwatchable. It's just not good. Almost any movie for me. I'm not one of those people that say movies are unwatchable. There's maybe like in my entire collection, I probably got like 3 movies that I would call unwatchable. But this is just, not even all right. This is just, you can watch this. It's watchable. That's like at the bottom of my tier, watchable. And this one is a good movie. I'm going to call this one a good movie. It's just, a lot of these are good movies. They just failed their mission to either reboot or remake and turn the profit that the studios was hoping for, or to achieve the audience rating that the studios was wanting. That's it. Thanks for watching. See you in the next one.